Sorcerers! Today we're looking at some ways you can level up your sorcery skills with the Battle Mage, one of the avatars available for Sorcery Contested Realm. And to help us with this, we're joined by a pillar of the Australian community and noted content creator, Jesse from The Winning Agenda. Jesse, thanks for coming on to talk with us.
Thanks for having me, Chase. It's great to be here.
So before we get into strategy talk, there are a lot of cool games out there, both physical and digital. So what about TCGs really speaks to you?
I think it's the two different things for limited and constructed play. So for limited play, it's the fact that it's always different. Every time you go to a draft, every time you go to a sealed event, you are going to have a really different experience. And there's going to be cards that you've never played before that all of a sudden are the perfect card for that particular draft or that particular situation. And also that everyone's on a level playing field at that point. You know, you come, you pay your $20 or whatever, you do the draft, and everybody's got access to the same level of card pool. I love that. Limited is kind of my favorite way to play TCGs. Love constructed as well, though, because of the customization. You know, it allows you to express yourself the way you like to play games, the way you like to compete, and you don't need to have any particular physical attributes. You know, like I play sport and I love sport, but we all have limitations of the things that we can achieve on the sporting field. Whereas I feel like with TCGs and having that as a competitive outlet, it's something that you can really keep growing and learning and getting better at, and anybody can be the greatest, which is really cool.
This is a judgment-free zone here, and I liked how you said, in construct you could express yourself, and I feel like we're going to be talking about the Battle Mage, which is a famously get up in your face and smash things. So we'll see. That's your chosen method of expression. So we'll get that way.
Perhaps it's expressing parts of ourselves that we aren't able to otherwise express.
There we go. Fantastic. And so you've covered several games on your YouTube channel, The Winning Agenda. What about Sorcery Contested Realm really piques your interest and maybe led you to become involved in the game so heavily?
So it started out with our good friends at Team Covenant, who did a really fantastic gameplay series during the Kickstarter. They were the ones that introduced me to the game through that. And I've known them for a long time through Netrunner, which was the original game that we started this podcast for, the Winning Agenda, and started the channel for. Known Zach and Steven for a long time. They're really great pillars of the gaming community. And after I saw them playing the game, I really wanted to learn more about it. So I jumped into the Discord. It was kind of pre-alpha phase. There was still a lot of playtesting going on. And really, it was an incredible opportunity that Eric and the team gave to us as members of the community to be involved in the development of the game at that early stage. You know, they'd obviously done years of work to get it to that point, but they just threw the doors open and said to the community, we want you guys to help us make it the best it can be.
Yeah.
And me and a bunch of other people was so grateful to have that opportunity, and I loved it. You know, I loved sinking my teeth into those questions about design development, and I just love the scope and the theme of this game. You know, I think what Eric's created, Eric and Nicholas and the others, is a really great, unique, different way to play card games. Because of the grid, it brings in lots of elements of other games that I love. You know, I love wargaming. I grew up doing that as a child. I love board games. I've enjoyed chess over the years. You know, there's so many different elements of different great games and genres, as well as things like D&D and the storytelling aspect that Sorcery has. It brings in sort of the best of each of those different game types, which so many of us love and enjoy, and it puts it all into one game, which is a pretty amazing thing to achieve.
So I think we'll just clip that as like the promo piece we put everywhere there. That was very well said. And so you've been there for a long time. You've been logging some serious time with Sorcery. What are some of the things that maybe still speak to you? Like, has your relationship with the game changed since you first started? Like, having put so many hours into it?
Yeah, I think my philosophy with lots of different games when I start out is to try and push the limits of efficiency with my deck building straight away. I kind of bring a kind of standard deck building approach to all different games to see what I can get out of them. And Sorcery, certainly the pre-alpha version, had some crazy broken things that you could do if you tried to push the limits of efficiency. I made one particular video which I put up on, I think it's still on the channel. It's not very good quality. It's just me playing through on TTS with, us narrating our game, me and my opponent. And the thing, I was able to basically draw my whole deck and then play everybody with charge and kill my opponent in one turn. And things like that, they did a really great job at toning down a bit. So my relationship with it's changed in the sense that, we all tried to push the boundaries. We were able to push the boundaries, and now we've got a more balanced, stable metagame. So the way you enjoy that is really different. It's no longer, oh, I can do all these crazy, wacky things, because it's not so fun being on the receiving end of those things all the time. Yeah.
And yet there are still some crazy, wacky things, whether
There
they're
are.
rolling boulders or jumping sharks, and
And the cool thing is that the crazy, wacky things now become all different elements in a larger story.
Right.
That unfolds as the game evolves, and as the particular game that you're playing completes itself. Whereas before, you sort of did these crazy, wacky things that just ended the game. So I think it's a much more fun and interactive way to play, and I really love that.
Well, and thank you so much for helping, with the time you've invested in the game and the feedback, for helping nurture Sorcery's development. And you've also been nurturing a Sorcery community, right, at Plenty of Games. Can you tell us a little bit about that store and some of the stuff you've been doing there?
Yeah, sure. So Plenty of Games is a game store in Melbourne, Australia, which is one of the larger cities, one of the two largest cities in Australia. And we have a group of us who are the kind of owners of Plenty of Games. It's sort of a community ownership feel, where there's a large group of people who have, I guess, a small ownership stake, but are part of the team at Plenty of Games. And then there are a group of 4 guys who are kind of the main driving force behind it, who most of us know through other card gaming communities, and that's how we got involved in the store. So what that allows those 4 guys to do is to tap into the broader team and say, who's got a passion for one of the many things that we do in the store, and do you want to take the lead on that, or help us to make our community for that game even better? Because there are so many games out there, and there's so many things you want to do as a game store. There's no way 1, 2, 3, 4 people can be on top of everything. So thankfully the team, we had a chat when I was involved in Sorcery, and I said, hey, look, I'd be very happy to take the lead with this and grow a community at the store. And they said, yeah, we'll support you to do that. Go for it. And I've been really grateful, for the support from the other guys. And what that's enabled us to do is we got the Innkeeper kit. We had some alpha product. We've been able to run alpha events with that. So we had 2 sealed events where we had 35 people at one, which was an amazing turnout. And then we've run 3 drafts now since then, with one coming up next weekend on the 24th of September. We've already got 2 draft pods full, and one more draft pod available, which is just so cool to see so many people embracing the game, people who've come and played in our 2 or 3 events so far coming back again, which is great for a brand new game. It speaks volumes to how much fun it is, and new people joining all the time. And we're looking forward to growing that even more for beta.
I'm a little biased, but it's a fun game to draft, right?
It's very fun. Yeah. We've got people who have been, like me, limited aficionados for a long time, who are jumping into Sorcery Draft and going, this is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got a pretty established community there. And you've got a lot of veterans. It sounds like you've got some pretty deep player pools. Any thoughts for people that are maybe in similar places or building up their communities on how to maybe integrate new players who are just getting started into their play groups?
I think there are a few things that are really important and that we've prioritized in building up our community. One has been to offer people the capacity to buy in at a reasonable price. When we were running our sealed events for Sorcery, for example, the alpha cards were quite difficult to come by and alpha packs were quite difficult to come by, but we made a priority of selling tickets for those events at a price that was fair and reflective of just what we needed to charge to cover our costs, rather than what we could have charged at market price. And that's very important, because not only does it make people feel like you're valuing them as customers, and they're taking the time and the chance to try out a brand new game, and you're giving them the opportunity to do that without breaking the bank. That's really important.
I think you're talking about you're really leading with your values there, right? And I think that kind of sets the tone for a community. Plenty of Games is held in really high regard, and I think those are probably a lot of the factors that feed into that.
And that comes that becomes a 2-way relationship. When you treat people with respect and you let them participate in your game in a way that's comfortable for them, that they want to be around your store. They want to be around your community, and they'll keep coming and giving back. And you need that. I can't, as one person, recruit everybody who's ever going to play the game at the store and keep growing the numbers, I need the other people who enjoy the game in the store to be talking about it and be advocates for it.
Yeah.
And you create people as advocates, not only by giving them the chance to firstly participate at a reasonable price and in a reasonable way that's comfortable for them, but creating an atmosphere that's comfortable, having tables and chairs and play spaces that are accessible and welcoming to everybody, and also having an environment that celebrates everybody's different level. When you're starting off in a new game, as you say, some people come in as TCG veterans and they've got a particular level that they're going to be playing at. And then we had young Tiago, who's I didn't ask exactly how old he is, but I'm going to get myself in hot water by saying so. I reckon he's about 10 years old.
Okay.
And he came with his dad. And then we had Nicholas, who also brought his son Soleil, and he's probably around 8 or 10 years old as well. So we had 2 father-son combos playing in our first draft event a couple of weeks ago. And Tiago, who's one of the sons, actually ended up winning one of the draft pods, which was an incredible achievement. He beat his dad in the final, and his dad was saying he grapple shot at him for the win, which is not unfamiliar for those of us who played Sorcery. And his dad was saying, I've only taught him the game a few weeks ago, and he's already beating me. So yeah, celebrating those little things and just recognizing that everybody's bringing, different experiences. Some people are bringing family, friends, people who they've advocated for the game to and said, hey, I want you to come and take a chance, which means they've invested in that as well.
Yeah.
So the better experience that you can give to everybody and the more welcoming you can make it, the more likely it is those people are going to come back.
Man, I love to hear those stories about like families really enjoying the game too, and just getting to have that experience with your kids. Like, that's awesome. Well, actually, let's shift gears here and talk a little bit about sorcery strategy then. So you've been a longtime advocate for the Battle Mage. And I've definitely watched some of your channel videos as I've been trying to level up my skills and learn from the community as well. So, as you have so much experience with the Battle Mage, let's talk about that avatar. And when you're building a Battle Mage deck, like what are some of the key things that I'm going to want to, or we're going to want to understand and keep in mind when trying to pilot this avatar?
It's all about tempo, taking tempo early and maintaining it and not losing it. And so you need to structure your deck really carefully around a few things. One is the Battle Mage itself. So it's got to be a key part of how you win the game. The 3 power that the Battle Mage has is your advantage, really, that you have over the other avatars. So you need to be using that, and you need to start using it as soon as in the game as you can. The way that you do that is by, once you start using a Battle Mage, you can't play any more sites. So you need to recognize that early. So when I first built a Battle Mage deck, I had things like Ultimate Horror in there. It's an 8-cost spell.
Yeah.
The reality is you're never going to get to 8 mana. You should never get to 8 mana, because if you get to 8 mana, then that means you've been tapping a Battle Mage to play sites.
Right.
At least 6, if you count a core and a tower in there perhaps to get to the Ultimate Horror. And that's too many. Those are turns that your Battle Mage could have been attacking. So it's very important to design your mana curve and your deck that it tops off at a point that is no higher than 5. So that the most expensive card I've got in my deck is Whirling Blades. Because if you're tapping to play sites for too many turns beyond that, then Battle Mage is not going to be in combat and you're going to get behind.
And that's a common problem with avatars, right? I think maybe many of us had been there when we're first starting out. You want to hang back and play sites, etc., and finding that balance between when do you move forward, when do you not, when do you engage. I feel like the Battle Mage is kind of the most emblematic of having to shift that gameplay style. What are the kind of combo cards? You mentioned Whirling Blades, right? That seems like a gimme. What are some other combos that are really essential for piloting a successful Battle Mage?
So there are lots of different ways you can go about gaining tempo or putting the pressure on your opponent at the start of the game. And the way that I've settled on as the most efficient and effective way with the current card pool is to use the towers, which are the basic air sites that give you effectively 2 mana the turn they come in, and then using 2 and 3 drop air minions that you can play on turn 1 and 2. So you're effectively playing them a turn earlier. The other thing to remember with the towers is that you only get the bonus once. So you've really got 3 of these bonuses, one for each of the 3 towers that you can use during the game. So that is a super important resource when you're playing these Battle Mage decks. You have to be very deliberate and careful about spending that tower bonus because you've only got 3 of them in the game and you want to use them carefully. So if you can play something like a Spectral Stalker on turn 1 right next to your opponent, you've immediately got a threat that they have to respond to.
Right.
Then if you, on turn 2, you play a tower, you get up to 3 mana, you can play a Phase Assassin, which is a 3-drop, and that's also got Void Walk, so you can play it right next to them. So that means if you're on the play on turn 1 and turn 2, you can conceivably play threats that are threatening to attack them immediately, and which they then have to, on their turn 2, 3, 4, be spending their mana to respond to, which means that then on your turn 3, 4, 5, you need to be adding more threats to the board.
Okay. And so the idea then is you're going to use those to be sort of a compensating factor while you're getting your early sights down, right? So you don't need to be as aggressive because you have those out there. Is that the right way to be thinking about it? Yeah.
Yeah. So one way to think about it is that you want your early plays to be using up your opponent's mana so that they're not developing their board. Because the cleaner the board is when your Battle Mage is ready to get into combat, the better.
Okay.
Because then if the board is basically Avatar versus Avatar, on the turn that you decide to, for instance, grapple shot your Battle Mage over to their side of the board, then you're ahead.
Yeah.
Because you got a 3-power thing and they've got a 1-power thing on the board.
Are there other minions that you like to build in around there besides like the super fast aggressive minions to, I don't know, control the tempo or just gain an advantage in other ways?
Yeah. So Highland Princess is a really great one from the unrevealed cards that were revealed later in Alpha. Because when we were talking before about every turn you tap your Battle Mage is a turn it's not attacking, that also means that every core or Philosopher's Stone you have is a turn you don't need to tap your Battle Mage. So they are actually worth damage. So an Amethyst Core or a Philosopher's Stone, you can effectively see as another 3 damage that you're able to get in those early turns of the game.
That's an interesting way of thinking of it. Yeah, okay. Hello.
So Highland Princess can either fetch those or it can fetch the Taurus Hammer Trinket as well, which gives you extra power and helps your Battle Mage take down bigger minions or just deal some extra damage on key turns.
Are you worried about, do you have any contingency plans? Like what if they do start to go maybe a little bit wider, right? And maybe getting a lot of foot soldiers or doing things spreading out. And now you can go walk and do like whack-a-mole, but like that's also time, right? Like you're losing turns. How do you anticipate that, or what do you do?
Yeah, so you can't end up in that situation where you're spending too many turns tapping your Battle Mage and not impacting your opponent's life total. And so you need to have, this is where the equipment comes in. So both the equipment and some of your minions, as well as some of your removal spells, help you deal with things your opponent might put on the board that are going to outclass your Battle Mage. So you've got the Screaming Skull, which helps to deal with lots of little minions. You've got the Flaming Sword that helps to deal with minions your opponent piles up on their site to try and prevent you from hitting their avatar for the death blow, for example.
Yep.
And you've got the Crown of the Victor that helps you deal with bigger minions. So in combination, Flaming Sword also helps as well because it gives the +1 power buff. So in combination, any of those artifacts can achieve some of those different objectives. And so having all of them in the deck just means that you've got this sort of Swiss Army knife to be able to deal with different things that might come up.
And then we'll link to a sample list of yours in the comments below. Do you typically go like mono air, or are you splashing in other elements? Well, what are things you like to combine here?
Yeah, there's a few different ways you can go. So there's a couple of water cards which are really effective in Battle Mage. So things like Shrink and Frost Nova, because Shrink makes something 0 power, which means when you hit it with your Battle Mage, you're not actually getting hurt back, which is really important. So it lets you take out big minions, which can be a weakness of the deck. And then Frost Nova sort of does a similar thing because it disables the opposing minions, which means they don't strike you back if you hit them. And that can let you, in combination with Screaming Skull, take out a whole lot of different minions without your Battle Mage actually getting hurt at all. But in my deck, I've opted to go for Fire. And that's for 2 reasons. One is Sacred Scarabs, which you can fetch off Highland Falconer, is really good at taking out Dapperel Vampires, which is really bad for this deck. So Dapperel Vampire is a way that they can gain life back, and it can be really annoying because you can't attack it with lots of your stuff because it has Airborne. And you can't attack it with your Battle Mage. So having Sacred Scarabs and having them be fetchable from the Highland Falconer means you can deal with those Dapperel Vampires really easily. And it's also just a great source of damage that's hard for them to block. So if they, just like Flaming Sword, if they pile up heaps of things on top of their avatar, you can just attack onto that site, and no matter what they defend with, the Scarab's going to deal 3 to everything.
So, looking at your list...
And Infiltrate is the other one. Sorry,
okay.
That.
Yeah. And so why Infiltrate? I mean, people may know, but for people who are maybe newer.
Yeah, Infiltrate is the last thing that this deck needed to be able to deal with big Earth minions. So the biggest weakness of this deck was like an Air Earth, Avatar of Earth deck, because Avatar of Earth firstly can get bigger than your Battle Mage, and secondly, all its minions are bigger than yours. So having Infiltrate lets you on a key turn. Your advantage is that, as you know, if you're going first, particularly, you get your stuff out first, so you might have a bit of tempo. And Infiltrate means that on that turn that they try and stabilize and play something really big and stop your advance, you can actually just take control of that big thing and keep going. So Infiltrate is primo.
So one thing I'm noticing here versus you look at a sample deck that you've got versus the way maybe I try and build a deck with this, is I often am really worried about if I'm going to be hitting stuff with the Battle Mage, like I gotta heal up. Like what's my backup plan? And like I try and throw in a bunch of healing resources. I'm not seeing Damper Vampires. I'm not seeing, if you were going Divine Healing for Earth. Why? Like why? And what can I learn from you here? How do you keep yourself, like if you fall behind, how do you not worry about taking damage back from other minions? And
so I guess one way to think about it is you never want to fall behind with this deck. So
that's my first mistake when I'm playing it. Like
you want to craft the deck in such a way that the highest percentage of your hands are going to let you be proactive. And if you have things like Divine Healing or other things that are purely about defending or dealing with bad game situations, and you draw them early on, then you're more likely to end up in a bad game situation.
So by planning for that, that's actually what's happening to me. Then is what you're saying. Is
possibly it could be.
Okay,
and it's not to say that you don't get behind. Like I played a game in the league. I had a great time in the most recent season of the league. I took this list and I think I went 7-1. And my loss was an opponent playing a Battle Mage list who played a free city on turn 1 and a free city on turn 2. And I'd gone first, so I had a Spectral Stalker and then a Phase Assassin. Right. But I can't attack free cities because they just kill my minions. So, and then they had a Whirling Blades on turn 4, killed everything that I'd deployed.
Sometime it'd be like that, yeah.
and then you're done. So, if you can't press your advantage and the things that happen in the game mean that you don't get that early tempo, sometimes you lose, but that's okay. A lot of the time you don't.
Well, what about also then, with sites? So obviously the lone towers are really key to this, right? Are there other things that you look to include to help amplify the strengths of the Battle Mage?
So Free City is one that is really good in the mirror match in particular, but it also just gives you some flexibility against things like Avatar of Earth that might be trying to race you with their Avatar's attacks. If you can have free cities on like the middle sites or somewhere around the middle of the board, it can make it a bit of a harder path, either if they're trying to race you with the Avatar or if they're trying to race you with minions. Because you do have that vulnerability that if they try and just defend, you can usually, the deck's set up to be able to get over the top of that, to take defenders out of the way and still be able to attack. But if they're trying to attack you back on your territory, you don't necessarily have all the tools to be able to deal with that. So having Free City can be really good. Smokestacks of Nyack I've got in the deck because Gnome Hollows and Free City on the opposing side of the board are super irritating. Battle Mage can't get into Gnome Hollows.
Yeah.
So having a Smokestacks to turn those things off, if you can get it in the right spot, can be really helpful.
And so that gives you your fire threshold then too, right? To help, splash it. Do you look at things like, arid deserts, like the basic sites there to like help clear out other minions? Or is that once again like worrying about the small stuff too much and you really want to focus on more impactful sites?
Yeah, I think that's probably it. Like if they've got 1 power things, we've got so many 2 power minions in the deck that we're usually going to be able to eat them up pretty easily. And if you play deserts, so I'm playing through Ruins in this particular deck because air threshold does kind of matter. Like you have Browse, you have Phase Assassin, Guy, Hippogriffs, Highland Princess, all of which have multiple air threshold requirement. So if you do get unlucky and draw too many deserts and free cities and things, you might not hit all your air threshold, which is a disaster.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna link this in the comments below. I'm gonna try this out. I'm gonna run this this exact deck you got over here, and I'm gonna see if I can start battle maging it up. I've tried some, but I think maybe I'm approaching it in a very different way than you are, and I think I should maybe try what you're doing. So I think
there are lots of different ways to skin the cat.
Yeah, I think I get too worried about being defensive and like what happens if I I just need to double down and really go for it. So,
yeah.
There's also a lot of other information about the Battle Mage that people can find on your channel. What are the best ways for people to find and interact with you online?
So you can go to youtube.com/thewinning-agenda, post most of my content as video content on YouTube. We've just started doing an introductory series for those of you looking to learn how to play Sorcery, just with the very basics. So check that out if you haven't actually played any games yet, but you're interested in the mechanics. I think if you probably got this far through that discussion of the Battle Mage, you probably got a bit of familiarity with the mechanics, but who knows?
Yeah. And, you know, like you said, you've got detailed deck guides on your channel.
I do.
You got some great intro comment. I'd imagine people would want to keep an eye on your channel in the lead up to the launch of beta on November 10th. So make sure you, what is it? You go over and ring the bell is what is the phrasing. But
yeah, make sure you subscribe. Yep.
And, any other events coming up for you? You mentioned one earlier, or exciting projects in the future that people should be aware of.
Yeah, for sure. So we've got that draft next Sunday on the 24th of September. So if you are in Melbourne, Australia, please do come and check that out. We've still got another draft pod available. We've filled up 2. So sign up for that if you like at plentyofgames.com.au. Otherwise, we've got a beta launch event that we'll be running in November alongside the beta release. So we'll have probably at least 1, maybe even 2 sealed events that weekend. We'll see how we go. Playing with some beta and really just trying to get more sealed gameplay going out there. And then a couple of weeks after that, probably towards the end of November, we'll start some constructed tournaments. So start getting your constructed decks ready.
We might need to follow up and hear about how those are going when those get rolling.
That'd be great.
Well, and so with that, I think we're going to wrap it up. Thanks so much for taking the time to come on and talk with us.
You're welcome, Chase. Thanks for having me.
And Sorcerers, thanks for tuning in. Check out Jesse's sample list in the comments below. And in the meantime, good luck contesting the realm.